Like many of you, I've spent a lot of time thinking about freedom and what it means to be free and where you can be free and how you can be free over the last 2 years. Because we've seen a big move by the parasites to just go for it. Just go the whole way. How much tyranny can we bring? How much deception and propaganda? All that stuff. That's not what this video is about. But I just want to make sure we're on the same page. First, so I'll talk a little bit about freedom. But in this video, I want to talk about 5 things that I've identified fairly recently that I think are absolutely critical to obtain freedom. First off, I'm not talking about freedom in this sort of either you have it or you don't way, which I think is a false dichotomy. I'm going to talk about it in sort of a linear progression. So there's, call it a total score. What's your freedom score? You know, from maybe it's 1 to 100. If you actually followed my work for a number of years back when I was the urban farmer and in my early days of the urban farmer, around the time I wrote my book, I came up with a rating system for crops. I called it the CVR, the crop value rating system. And I know this is sort of a cheesy analogy to compare that to what we're going to talk about today, but it actually kind of just to make the point. So to help illustrate the point, I should say, is when I came up with this rating system, I was looking at 5 elements of a crop that make it profitable. I'm not going to go through all of that. But basically, for each element, you would assign yourself a score. It could be 1 out of 10, 1 out of 25, it doesn't matter. But this score would give you a certain element of that. So would be how valuable the crop is on a 1 to 5 scale, let's say. 5, it's very valuable. It's the highest price crop you can get, and 1 being it's really low valued. And you'd kind of put out this total score, and then that would tell you how valuable a crop was. And so I want to think about this freedom index in the same way. So we have 5 things, that, and I'll go through each of them. I'll summarize them now. But first, we'll talk about freedom just a little bit more. The 5 things are mindset, knowledge, resources, geography, I can't hold 4 fingers very well, and politics. So we're going to go through each of those. But first, I just want to set up the framework of freedom and kind of what I mean by that. Because you've heard the term freedom, and you hear people talking about it all the time. But what does it actually mean to be free? I think people could have a debate on this. But since this is my video, let me propose what I think being free means. So first of all, freedom is a choice where you can choose one thing or the other. That's paramount to being free. And with that decision of deciding to do something or not to do something, on a varying scale will carry more rights, or not rights, but risks and responsibilities. And of course, rights as well. But just like I've got these water tanks behind me, so at this current time, I'm free. I have free water. So I paid for a lot of things up front. But I have free, limitless water in a mountain. And I can store it, a lot of it in a gravity tank, which feeds down to my main irrigation system. And we decommission it in the winter, just to answer that question really quickly. So we have another water source, a cistern that's protected from the cold that we use for the house currently, and when we set it up, we'll have something different. But this system cost money to build. It took a lot of work, and it takes more work to maintain than if I lived in a city and I just turned on the water. But this gives me freedom in the sense that the government could turn off the water or put fluoride in the water, which they do. And it's out of my control for the most part. Yes, you can filter it, you can do things to it. At the same time, it could be just turned off tomorrow. Whereas this can't be turned off just as as easily. And that gives me a freedom. But with that freedom comes a responsibility and a cost. And I want to sort of, as I go through these 5 things, I want you to keep in mind that, this is my opinion, that most people don't want to be free. Especially the more they learn about what's involved. And that's where freedom is not, it's very dynamic, it's not static. In that, even as you work towards more freedom, you'll find that, as you achieve certain benchmarks, like having your own water is just one example, that you understand the nuance of the responsibility of that thing, which you didn't before. When you glamorized it and you just thought of how exciting it would be to achieve something like that, you might not have fully understood what was involved. And you could say that for anything, really. But that's an interesting thing about freedom, is that you'll continuously find and understand the real cost of it. And it isn't cheap. But in order to get it, I think you need 5 things. And so I'm putting this out there just because I like to put ideas out to the collective conscious, and I like to see what people say, and I like people help me refine my thoughts. Like back when I was a musician, I was the kind of guy that could just jam. I can sit in, I could play most instruments, and I could sit in and jam. And I always found that my creative capacity is always fully explored when I bounce it by people and I circulate it through the collective conscious. And in fact, give credit where credit's due. The ideas I'm proposing to you today were really helped, refined by my wife. We had a really nice weekend. It was our 8th year anniversary, and we had some time to hang out in a hot tub and just talk about ideas. And so I got to give her credit to this for what I proposed to you today. So let's get into it without any further ado. The first thing you need to get towards freedom, to get more freedom, what have you, is a mindset. And I could do easily a whole video on mindset, and you could go online and spend a lifetime searching about mindset. This is a big topic. It might be one of the, well, I don't need to compare any of them. It's a big topic. And instead of me talking like Tony Robbins for the next hours, I want to make this video relatively short. I'm already 7 minutes in. Let me just share with you some of the things that have been beneficial to me in my mindset, and then we'll move on to the next one. So for me, mindset, you really have to think abundantly. And that means abandoning the scarcity mindset, the sort of the zero-sum game. This is the progressive narrative of the day, which is this, this is the establishment narrative, is that if somebody else is winning, that means you're losing, therefore you must take their stuff. You must get a hold of the state to take their stuff. And scarcity thinking is actually the root of anti-freedom, of non-freedom, because it's how you control people in the mind to do things that you want them to do. Just like every atrocity that's ever been committed under the guise of a regime, whether it's communism, fascism, it's all the same stuff. It's collectivism, because the idea of scarcity is the root of how you mobilize people into collective thought. And so you convince one group of people they're being screwed over by another group of people, and then they fight it out, and then you as the establishment get to just do whatever you want because everybody's too busy fighting and arguing about things. And so to free yourself of the mind, first you must free the idea of scarcity, because the thing is that's amazing, and like I was alluding to, talking about how the more you work towards freedom and actually take the responsibility, you learn more about that freedom and the value of that freedom, is that the value of abundant thinking is amazing. And the more you actually engage in nature, this is what I've discovered, is the more you find the abundance. And it's absolutely, it's written through everything. I believe it's God's creation, and the power of the Creator is written in everything through nature. That's why ultimately I find spending more time in nature is at least a path to God and higher thinking and higher level of awareness, at least for me. And this whole idea of scarcity is just manufactured. And you can go through, I mean, where do you want to start with how the establishment have manufactured an idea of scarcity? De Beers diamonds, there's one that's not even controversial and everybody knows about that conspiracy. how De Beers, like diamonds are actually super abundant in the earth. It's just they control the main places they can be found, and then they've manipulated the price, and it's just a total racket. Big surprise, right? But even things like oil, you know, and I'm not going to go on a tirade about this because another topic you can spend on forever, but this whole idea of peak oil, I bought into it. You know, I was initially in part motivated to become the urban farmer and do that whole thing because this idea of scarcity through oil. And that was a big kerplunk, that narrative of peak oil. I mean, again, I bought into it, but I mean, the wells just keep pumping. It's because the whole idea of fossil fuels is nonsense. It's propaganda. There's actually no real evidence for it. But that aside, another manufactured scarcity. So without paying too much time to the negative side, let's talk about the positive side. On the flip side of that, you realize that everything is absolutely abundant. A seed, when a seed reproduces itself 10,000 times over infinitely, everything in nature is just abundant. And the secret is, I believe, is that because we're a creation of the Creator, and so is nature, we both share an infinite capacity for abundance. And, you know, in my own experience, just the experience of sharing ideas with people and then seeing an idea, perhaps like in this video, explode into something you never thought. And it's absolutely amazing. And so the mindset, you first got to have this abundance mentality, because really it's the first prison. The mind is the first prison. You is a spark of creation. I believe we're divine beings born into bodies, and we play a game of forget our entire lives. And that's the first prison. Is the body is the first prison. And so it's a constant evolution of moving past what you just physically are and see to the understanding that you're connected to it all, and there's this infinite abundance. And so again, I could go on mindset all day, but let's kind of move through this thought and then move on to the next one. And so the reason you need to have mindset first is because without the proper way of thinking and excitement to move forward and do the work, you won't really get into the next ones, because all of these things require work. And again, it starts with you in the mind switching to a positive way of thinking that gives you the energy. A lot of people ask where I get my energy from. Mostly it's mindset. It's that I wake up every morning grateful and I'm excited for the day, even if I have to do something that is less savory, let's say. But I always wake up excited for the day, and that's primarily where I get my energy. Yeah, diet and exercise have a lot to do with it too, but it's mostly in the mindset. And so, yeah, there's a lot of material out there on mindset. I could talk about it for a very, very long time. And yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the next one, knowledge. So mindset leads to knowledge, because you won't want to pursue knowledge if you aren't inspired to do so and ready to put in the work and have your stamina of your mind, because it's physically exhausting pursuing new knowledge and actively digging into things, especially when it's drudgerish, like reading the law, for example, which I've spent a lot of time doing. And the knowledge is the thing that will also lead to the other things that I'm going to talk about and provide remedy for each of these things as well. Just as mindset provides remedy to seeking knowledge, and that gives you the key. Okay, now I want to seek the knowledge and work towards something better. The mindset is the hierarchy of values to go at being better in some way or another. And the knowledge will take you in the direction to give you information on how you can do the rest of it. So you need the knowledge. And, you know, there's not really much else to say to that one. I could talk about that one for a long ways if I just wanted to riff. But the information is key. And again, the information, however you get it, will lead you through the next one. So number 3 is resources. You need resources. And I'm not just talking about money. Check out the 8 forms of capital. I did a video on it. Click up wherever that's going to pop up on the screen there. I'll direct you to that video if you want to check it out. Because the 8 forms of capital are super important. They're also very enabling. They are also very empowering. Because once you understand the 8 forms of capital and you realize that there's ways to generate wealth and hold wealth without the use of money, it's like, oh wow, that's a little secret that the elite didn't want you to know, because they want you to believe, or the parasite class I should say, they want you to believe that the only way through the game, the only way to succeed in the matrix is to accumulate money. It just so turns out that they print it all and collect interest off you just holding it. They get paid for absolutely nothing, and they tax you, they regulate you, they throw occupational licensing on you, and ultimately they inflate you because they keep printing it. So they want you to think that money's the only game in town because, well, they got a nice little monopoly on it. Again, that circles back to this whole myth of scarcity. That was all created. In North America, we can mostly thank the Rockefeller family for that one, for the whole, I call it the Rockefeller payment plan, where they basically get you on a program where you're paying them for the rest of your life, but everything you're paying them for is your own demise, your own slow demise. But anyways, back to capital and resources, there's way more than just money. So just to touch on some, resource or biological capital is a form of capital. So the plants, the trees, the gardens that I've prepared, amending the soil, putting in biodiversity or letting biodiversity find its way in, creating opportunities for water to accumulate, things like this. These are biological capital resources, incredibly important, and those can't be inflated and taxed out of existence. Another form of capital, one of my personal favorites, is social capital, is accumulating goodwill amongst people that you know, people that you interact with, people that you talk to, people in your family, people on your extended network, even your acquaintance network. Having goodwill out there is a massive form of capital. Another big secret too, but that has a capital return. Yeah, you can't put it on a P&L, a profit and loss monthly, but you can feel it in your life. And I tell you what, I changed my line of thinking towards being abundance and doing that with people and sharing with people and doing goodwill. I mean, it just comes back in droves, and it's one of these things that if you invest in early has massive exponential returns. So that's another form of resources or capital. And knowledge is actually a form of capital. Family capital. Anyways, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you get the idea. There's other forms of capital that are resources. And so resources is super important. And the great thing about resources is that the other two things will actually get you resources. Because if you have the mindset and you have the knowledge, you can actually start to accumulate resources far easier than you ever thought. And the better you get at it, the easier it gets at. Like at this point in my life, at 43, I've been pursuing my career, starting as the urban farmer for 12 or 13 years now. And I've consistently put resources back into that goal of growing my career and getting to freedom, which this all connects to where I am now, because I started with the intention of finding freedom at the time, only doing what I had available to me. And maybe if I can remember, I'll circle back to this. But that pursuit has brought me here and has allowed me to continuously accumulate and use resources that I've made. And like I said, the better you get at it, the faster it happens. Like I don't want to use money as a metric because it's it is a false dichotomy. It's a false understanding to only think about things as money. But I can achieve things now that used to take me an entire week of work, I can achieve in an hour. Because of all those cumulative 8 forms of capital that I have behind me at this current juncture in time that I can leverage. And so anyways, you could have massive conversations on resources as you could any of these subjects. Number 4 is geography. So what do I mean by geography? Well, the place that you are. And that could have a huge varying degree of scale. For example, when I started as the urban farmer, ultimately I always wanted to do this. I always just wanted to be on a large acreage and do sort of broad acre permaculture stuff, grow my own food, live off grid, have my family there. This has been my entire life's work to get to this point. But when I was the urban farmer, I took what I could at the time. I wanted to do this, but this costs a ton of money and time and experience to do this kind of thing. And so I had to get there, and I thought, well, I could start urban farming now. Yeah, I'm not living off grid. Yeah, I'm not doing exactly what I want, but I'm moving in the right direction. And so that was a geographical decision I made. It was a lot of other decisions too, but it was partly a geographical decision to change my geography in the micro. So, okay, yeah, not in the country, not on a large acreage, but I'm still in the city. I'm in more of a suburban city, not like a Montreal or a Toronto or Chicago or whatever. I'm in a suburban city, but I'm on a small acreage and I have a lot of space to grow my own food. So that was a move towards a better geography. Of course, now I'm in my opinion, as I would rate this whole scoring system, this freedom index that we're talking about, I would rate where I am now a 10 versus where I was when I started urban farming. So geography is important. You can get out of a city, you can move to another country, and that will tie into the next one we're going to talk about. But basically in geography, you can change your geography on the micro and you can change it on the macro. And you can also move to a different political, which is number 5, another political environment. So again, we have all these things that have brought us to this point. Your mindset helps you get the knowledge helps you achieve resources. Resources will allow you to change your situation geographically, having the money to be able to afford to buy a large acreage like I'm on and do this kind of thing. But the politics are where we get a wild card. This is where we get a curveball, if you will, because I live in a fascist country. The way I define Canada is, and I would define the US as the same, is a corporate fascisto communist system. And let me flush out that, and then this is going to link into how we actually can find freedom in countries that are even this so. And I recognize that our corporate fascisto communist system isn't as bad as just brutal straight up communism like you have in North Korea, because we have these other elements that are tied to free market capitalism, but it's not free market capitalism. That gives us better points towards more freedom away from tyranny. And so what do I mean by this in regards to Canada? Well, most of us probably know what fascism is. Just look up the textbook definition. There's a Mussolini quote that's basically what's become the standard definition. I'm not going to recite it verbatim, but it's essentially that it's where governments and corporations just take control. And it's all about that. And so if the last 2 years in most Western countries isn't an example of fascism, I don't know what we're talking about, because corporations and government, well, we saw the pharmaceutical industrial complex essentially take over the government through technocratic bureaucracies and told you what to do with your life for the last 2 years. So if that's not a definition of fascism, I don't know what it is. So bear with me. If you're with me here so far, let me explain the corporate part, because aren't corporations, isn't it the same thing? Well, not quite. Governments are corporations, folks. If you don't already know this, go on the United States Securities Exchange Commission website, go under company filings and type in the word Canada. You'll find a corporation registered on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. Now, where's the U.S. registered? I'm not exactly sure. It's not on the U.S. SEC, at least that I can see. It is... I've heard that it's in Puerto Rico, and that's why Puerto Rico has this weird state, kind of like Washington, D.C. does. Anyways, another point to governments being corporations. If you're at least as old as me, I'm 43, I can remember when I used to drive into my hometown, Kelowna, BC, and there would a sign saying the Incorporated City of Kelowna, or the Corporation of the City of Kelowna. It used to say it on City Hall, actually. And you'll see this when you go into rural areas. You'll see now entering unincorporated areas. So what does that mean? Well, that means it's all corporated. This isn't actually a controversial thing, but it's important to point out, because What we think normal fascism is actually, at least in Western countries that use the commercial law system, which I've talked about in dozens of my live streams, the Uniform Commercial Code, all this, essentially everything is a corporation, including that all caps name that you have, which is the front end of a trust. But that's a whole other conversation. And so everything is a corporation. So I think if you're with me still so far, you'll agree that I could change the definition of fascism to corporate fascism because of that reason alone. Most people don't realize that governments are corporations. And the thing that's most important to understand about and why it's important, because you might say, yeah, Curtis, that's actually technically true, but is that actually controversial? It's not actually. But the problem with it is, what is the primary function of a corporation? Do you know what the primary function of a corporation is? It's to generate profit for its shareholders. That is the bona fide primary function of a corporation. So that creates a problem. Now, if governments are corporations and their primary function is to create profit, well, who are they creating profit to? That's a big question, and we're not going to get into that one. But I have some thoughts on it for sure. So we have corporate fascisto and communism. So we have fascism for the elites. We have corporate fascism for the elites, in that it doesn't matter what policies are enacted for the people. The elites, the obsoletes, I like to call them, or the parasites, they always have remedy. And that's simply, I mean, you could debate this a bit, but I would say mostly it attributes to the fact that if you're super rich and you're in the elite, you have access to information that most people don't have access to, and you can bend the system to do your bidding, right? I mean, is that controversial to say at all? I don't think so. I mean, in the legal system as we know it, if you can afford the biggest swinging dick lawyers, you'll win the case. I mean, come on, like this is how we railroad people in the system, whatever. So the benefits of fascism are to the elites, and the benefits of communism are for the proletariat. So the people that are living in the cities, that are having their business windows smashed in by BLM and Antifa, or you're living by the U.S. border, where you're just the southern border, where you're just getting your property stolen all the time because the government's just deciding to flood in immigrants because that's the best thing for them, to have cheap labor and also run child sex trafficking. But that's a whole other the conversation we'll get into another time perhaps. But so we have fascism for me and communism for thee. So fascism for the elites, the benefits of fascism, and because the downside benefits of fascism are the same as the downside benefits of communism. So this is why I'm kind of differentiating fascism and communism only different in their benefits to the elite and their non-benefits to the proletariat. Is the same. If you're living in a communist regime, the brutality is just as bad as a fascist regime. And you could debate that on numbers, of course, because certainly more people have been killed under communism by a huge order of magnitude than have been fascism, but I digress. So you communism for the people, and so this is where this is a big conversation too, but this is where you have all the woke ideology that is just for the peasants. Do you think George Soros and Henry Kissinger give a shit about your pronouns? They're not doing that. Yeah, they dress in drag and screw each other at the Bohemian Grove and all that, for sure. But they don't give a shit about your gender ideology. That ideology is for the peasants, right? All this wokeism stuff, climate change, everything over the last 2 years that was 2 + 2 is 5. Okay, wear a mask, no, don't wear a mask. Take a shot, no, don't take a shot. Or no, take a shot. Oh, it didn't work. Take another shot. Oh, that didn't work. You got sick again. Oh, here, try this one. Maybe the third one, maybe the fourth one, maybe the fifth one will get you. So that's wokeism, in my opinion. That's all tied to the political apparatus, but it's the communist arm of the political apparatus. So the communism is for the people, and all this the progressive policies in large cities that are essentially just incentivizing the most demoralized behavior, drug addiction, drag queen pedophile time at the library, sponsored by the state. Like, wokeism is state-sponsored communist propaganda. And so again, I could talk on that one for hours alone, but so if you're still with me, there's an element of politics to this. And all the things that I mentioned before can provide remedy to that. So again, mindset gives you remedy for knowledge, because if you don't have the mindset, you won't pursue the knowledge. And if you don't even have the mindset in the way you understand things, you might not be able to interpret the knowledge that well. Knowledge leads to resources. The more motivated you are, mindset, the more knowledgeable you are, knowledge, the more you can create wealth. And that's then from wealth and resources allows you to change your geography, get the hell out of the city, whatever. Then all of this leads to politics. Unfortunately, I hate politics, but it's part of the matrix, and it can seemingly control our life. But I would also put out philosophically that it doesn't have to be. Now, the caveat there is, of course, it depends. Everything depends. If you're living in North Korea, it's way harder to attain any kind of level of freedom like what I have here than it would be if you live in the US or Canada. But it is possible, because knowledge of the political system and how things work, and this is where I've figured out a lot of things in my life, and that's not what this video is about, but I've learned a lot about the political environment in Canada for the last 10 years just by doing stuff, writing letters, standing up to it, asking questions. I found that it's all a dog and pony show. And again, this video isn't about this, but it's worth to touch on, because all is not lost. You might think that you live in the worst scenario as possible, and I can't defend places like North Korea. One, I've never been there. Two, I don't know anything about how their system of law works, but I do know how the Western system of law works, and it's all the same. It's all based on this Roman civil law stuff that came out of the Holy Roman Empire and whatever. We're not going to get into that today. But the more you learn about that, the more you can navigate it and make better decisions politically. And then all the ramifications of everything that comes with those politics, regulations, taxes, occupational licensing, tariffs, you name it, all of it. I'm not a remedy guru. I'm not out here to say, hey, this is how you fix this and this and this. I'm not going to do that. And here's the reason why I'm not going to do that. I have found in my pursuit of understanding the political climate better that the knowledge is very powerful, but it's also very risky in the sense that if you don't know what you're doing with that information and you're going to poke the bear, you're going to get bit and you're going to get nailed. And there's no downside, or there's no upside for me to go out publicly and make claims about this is how you do this, this is how you do that. I've gotten to know a number of people that people would call remedy gurus over the years, and every single one of them that I know that's been doing this for a long time, all of them say that and they don't share information like they used to. And I'm not going to name names, but people who follow my work probably know who I'm talking about. But these guys don't do it anymore. And the main reason is that most people are idiots, unfortunately. And being an idiot isn't static, right? It's dynamic. You cannot be an idiot too. You can get better. I think there's many points in my life where I was an idiot. But I'll just use that term for that. And most people are idiots, and they just want to do something for a quick turn and burn. Give me a solution now. I don't care about the information. I just want the remedy. That attitude gets you screwed in the system. And so that's the primary reason that I'll never talk about remedy in any way, and specifically online. And so it's not worth putting information out to people who can't handle it. It's like that old clip in, I don't know what that movie with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson was, you can't handle the truth. That's the damn truth. People can't handle the truth. And the truth, in my opinion, the truth can actually do a disservice to people if the proper context and time isn't applied. This is why the mindset leads to the knowledge, and how you learn these things is you have to have the mindset. So you can change your political situation, because the more you understand it, the better you get it, and even the better you can get at it. And just in a really mainstream example, people who are rich can simply pay money to lawyers to figure out remedy. right? That is not controversial to say. And so the reason that's important to say, though, is that it shows that there is remedy on the most mainstream example. There's all kinds of other examples. We're not going to get into that. But I think if you're with me this far, you understand that. So those are the 5. And every single one of them has a degree. So you could, I don't know, make it a 1 through 5 for each one to create a total score of 25. And do it for yourself. It might be kind of interesting. But the trickiest one are probably mindset and knowledge, because those things are infinite. And so how do you put things into a metric? I like to do it sometimes just for the sake of it. It's fun. It's fun to kind of just lay things out, to analyze and to think about them. But I'm not suggesting that you go and create a freedom score for yourself, because it's probably not really that useful. However, it would be useful to think about each thing and think about what you're doing with each one of those things. So mindset number 1, what are you doing regularly in your habits, in your day-to-day life, to improve your mindset? That's a question for you. Think about it. Maybe leave a comment below. Like, what are you thinking about to change? What are you doing every day to change your mindset? Because everything I talked about in this requires work, constant work. So what are you doing to regularly change your mindset? What are you doing to regularly pursue knowledge that is going to help your situation? I'm sure a lot of you watching my videos are doing that regularly, because you're watching this video. You're coming to me to hear my thoughts on something and get yourself some knowledge, which is great. But think about it further. Like, how far are you going? Do you hate the political environment? Do you want to find remedy? Well, then all I can say is start reading it. If you don't like the government and you don't like the political situation, start reading it. Don't just sit there and say, well, I hope Ron DeSantis gets elected and he changes it. He's not going to change shit. Neither is Pierre Poilievre in Canada. They're not going to change anything. We're in a state of decline, and we can see it in everything we look at. Let's be honest with ourselves. And there's a fear calm element as things decline, I believe. And I think we're going into a state of calm for a little while, because the lockdowns are over. Okay, things seem to be kind of back to normal, but the New World Order is going to keep pushing. So, yeah, but anyways, your knowledge will give you remedy. And the key is just start reading it and you'll find it. The stuff's everywhere. And then resources. What are you actively doing to accumulate resources? It isn't just going to work every day. It isn't just doing the daily grind to pay for the rat race. I would argue that the pursuit of resources can really only start after the rat race. I mean, that's not, no. Let me take that back. It's not that. It's that you need to pursue resources through other means, like using the 8 forms of capital and leveraging that. And what are you doing? Basically, it's what are you doing to pursue resources outside of your daily grind? Okay, that's the question there. What are you doing to pursue resources outside your daily grind? Number 4, the geography. What are you doing to change your geography? It might just be putting gardens in your yard. Like, that could be a first step. That's changing your geography. And, well, it's not, people could debate that, but that's how I'm saying it. You can change your geography. You can change the world around you, even just where you're sitting, and then you can move to somewhere else. That's all geography. So what are you doing to change that? And then politically, what are you doing to change your political situation? It's not voting, folks. It's not voting. Though I will say, I think the only valid vote in this day and age is local politics. And I know a lot of people that are actually running for council this year in different places around British Columbia, and it's kind of cool to see. The one thing I've observed in politics is that most federal and provincial or state policies go through the funnel of the local politics. So if one were to, I've kind of had this fantasy for a while, everybody who's awake should just move out of the big shitties and go to smaller towns that have city sizes of less than 1,000 to a few thousand, or less than 10,000, and just take over the city councils. Just run all these truthers and just be hardcore. Call out globalism. Don't pander and play with when they ask you, are you vaccinated? Are you an anti-vaxxer? Fucking rights, I'm an anti-vax. Fucking rights. I don't stand for New World Order woke policies. Like, people need to get some balls and start doing this. And here I am on the mountain saying what people should do, and I'm not doing it. So I'm a hypocrite there. For myself to run in local politics at this juncture of my life with the responsibility I've just taken on is impractical. But there is an election happening right now. So I do think there's a huge potential that for things to change if the local policies, the smaller towns can change. And my thinking there too is, and I don't mean to derail on this. This video is already, my goodness, 40 minutes. Is that if the New World Order, as I've discussed it in my live streams, and if you've heard me sharing these things for the number of years, the game is to just take over the big cities and create those cities, to make those cities subvert the national sovereignty and move towards a UN sanctuary city type thing. These high-tech cities, they talk about this in Agenda 21. And that's where they're going. And so our sort of Tai Chi move is to let the cities do that. Don't try to change the cities. Like, can you imagine, think like a city, Vancouver, an absolute shithole. The tent cities and this are everywhere. It's the same in Kelowna now too. It's all growing, and after the Rona lockdowns, it went full tilt, just like everything did. We're in a quickening. But imagine if we took over the small towns, and we let the cities do their thing, and if this war of attrition is going to go down, like this mark of the beast system, which I think it's going to, what's going to happen eventually. And I don't mean to say that to create fear. It's just like, that's just the way things are going. Do something about it. Is that we'll survive the proverbial line in the sand, mark of the beast, a lot better than if we're all divided. If we just go in and start taking over all these small towns, we can really, like, the cities will get woke. They'll continue to get woke. They'll continue to downward spiral and just worship false idols and depravity and just homelessness and massive gentrification and all these brutal things that make living in a city shitty. That's why I call them the big shitties. But they'll just do that. And so we have an opportunity to actually change things politically in that regard. At least that's my thinking at the time. My thoughts can change. Like I said when I started this video, I just wanted to put this out to the collective conscious and see what you guys think. Let me know in the questions and comments. Maybe I missed something. I'm always open to changing my opinion. Anyways, folks, I hope you guys found that helpful. If you did, smash the like button. Share the videos with your friends. If you think somebody will find this video helpful, share it with them, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Check out my site fromthefield.tv. It's where I post all my vlogs and the vast majority of all my content. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next one.